Donald Trump and the GOP are effectively openly feuding at this point about whose fault it is that Trumpcare failed, that it looks like it's not going to be passed, and what the path forward should be. There's multiple options being advocated for. In most cases, mutually exclusive options being advocated for by the same person, Donald Trump, who, depending on what hour you check in with him on, it's impossible to say what he thinks should be done.
He thinks big things. Tremendous things.
Big things, things that can't fit within one brain. He says repeal and replace with something like Trumpcare, even though he doesn't seem to know what that is. Repeal and then wait and then replace someday. Just repeal. Don't repeal at all, just let it fail on its own, which will happen now. Or wait, maybe it'll actually happen in 6 months, and so we'll just wait until the midterms and they get more Republican senators and then we can replace it. Or we need to pass the bill, we're gonna repeal and replace actually. And all of that inside of about 27 hours.
Yeah.
And so if you're a senator on the Republican side or a congressperson, I have no idea what you are supposed to think or what you're supposed to do in trying to parse all that.
Right, because well, here's what I think you should do if you are a Republican senator or if you're a senator, period. If you are an elected official, don't listen to Trump's threats. Don't listen to what he wants and don't try to appease him because he very clearly doesn't care about being loyal to you or looking out for you. Listen to your constituents and what they want, and I think that's what's happening.
Tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans. Well, clearly,
that's obviously not
regular people want it.
That's obviously not true. But I think what's interesting is we have this rare moment where we have moderate GOP senators listening to their they're moderate, relatively speaking,
yes,
and relative to some of the more insane right-wingers that we have in office. But the moderate Republicans are actually listening to the concerns of their constituents.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place because they don't know whether it makes sense to appease Trump. It doesn't make sense to appease Trump. It makes sense to represent the people who actually elected you into office.
Yeah. So look, he had a big meeting with many of the senators, some of the senators who were considered no votes on various proposals, because as I said, there are many at this point. And so I want to go through a couple of videos, some of the highlights from this meeting. So first of all, in this video, you'll see an indication that Donald Trump still thinks that they can push through and do something soon, actually before the August recess. Here are his thoughts on that.
We have no choice. We have to repeal and replace Obamacare. We can repeal it, but the best is repeal and replace, and let's get going. But I'm ready to act. For 7 years, you promised the American people that you would repeal Obamacare. People are hurting. Inaction is not an option. And frankly, I don't think we should leave town unless we have a health insurance plan, unless we can give our people great health care.
Well, see, really fast, that's interesting because he's saying the senators shouldn't leave town for their August recess unless we have a plan. It'll be interesting to see if he can forego leaving this weekend to play golf. We'll find out, is he gonna leave or not? But as I said earlier, a couple of the senators who he is most trying to get over onto his side are not only at the meeting, but actually sitting right next to him, and look at an interaction with Senator Heller that he had.
The other night I was very surprised when I heard a couple of my friends, they really were and are. They might not be very much longer, but that's okay. I think I have to get them back. That's right. Well, no, you didn't go out there. This was the one we were worried about. You weren't there, but you're gonna be. Look, he wants to remain a senator, doesn't he? Okay. And I think the people of your state, which I know very well, I think they're going to appreciate what you hopefully will do.
Well, what he did, thankfully, was stop the law from being passed, which I'm sure they will appreciate.
Make no mistake, if his constituents were clear about how they wanted to repeal the Affordable Care Act and replace it with what the Senate had proposed, he would have done it. But he didn't do it because he listened to his constituents. So for those constituents, my question to you is, don't you find it insulting that Trump is essentially threatening his position as a senator there, right? Essentially telling you as an American voter that your vote is not as important, that your opinions are not as important, that your best interests are not as important. What's important is that this senator listened to the wants and the needs of Donald Trump just so he can point at how he supposedly made a deal, that he actually did something. Exactly.
Yeah. So I want to go to one more video from him because, as I said, he keeps jumping from repeal to repeal and replace and back and forth as if those things are very similar. So let's go to one more video of Donald Trump.
And we should hammer this out and get it done. And not just a repeal. Hey, it was sort of early on, along with a few of the other folks at the table. The repeal was fine. But we ought to get more than I think the people of this country need more than a repeal. They need a repeal and a replace. And we were very, very close.
And see, that statement there scares me. I mean, you're not going to be surprised to find out that he doesn't know anything about healthcare policy or health insurance. But he's talking about those terms as if the word repeal and the word replace have independent meaning in regard to health insurance. As if we need a replace. But you're talking about it as like, maybe we just get repeal, maybe we get repeal and replace. Well, those are fundamentally different approaches or answers to the question of what is wrong with the American healthcare system. Okay, if you think that repeal is what needs to happen, then you think that the ACA, Obamacare, is the cause of our problems, and government regulation getting involved with health insurance companies, that is the problem. That's driving up premiums or whatever things you think it's doing. Repeal and replace implies that independent of the ACA, there are problems with our health insurance and healthcare industry, and government does need to get involved, perhaps in a different way than the ACA, to fix those problems. And that's why replace can mean 100 different things. It can mean we repeal most of Obamacare and we give hundreds of billions of dollars of tax cuts to the richest Americans, or it means we replace Obamacare with single payer. You can input almost anything into that word. But his understanding of it is shallower than the water that robot committed suicide in yesterday. And he's the person who's supposed to be helping the Republicans to get it done. That is horrifying.
Right, and there's also a complete lack of understanding how government works, because in that last video that we played for you guys, he makes it seem as though they were seconds away with coming up with a replacement plan for the Affordable Care Act. But that's not how government works. House has its version. The Senate was supposed to vote in favor of their version. Yeah. Obviously, there are differences between the two, and then they come together and negotiate and come up with a plan that they both the House and the Senate can agree on. That's how Congress works. But he seems, I don't know if he is unaware of that, or if he likes to play the role of stupid because he thinks that appeals to some of his voters. I don't know.
I grew up with some people like that. It's possible.
It's possible. I mean, it could be part of his strategy. I have no idea. But Congress is not anywhere close to coming up with a replacement plan for the Affordable Care Act. In fact, they're not even close to deciding what they want to do. If they want to just repeal it, if they want to keep it in place. It's just, it's maddening. And by the way, things keep changing so quickly that it's hard for, those who are supposed to do analysis and to check on these types of policies to do their job. So for instance, the CBO, this is breaking news, just released numbers on what would likely happen to Americans if they had decided to just repeal Obamacare without a replacement. The Congressional Budget Analyst estimated Wednesday that a Senate plan to repeal part of the Affordable Care Act with no immediate replacement would increase the number of people without health coverage by 17 million next year, and 32 million by the end of a decade. And so there are real ramifications to what's happening right now.
Yeah.
And again, there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of fear, a lot of people don't know what they can expect. And keep in mind that the health insurance industry doesn't like uncertainty either. So they are likely to raise premiums to kind of make up for that uncertainty.
Help us build independent media together. Come join us, tytnetwork.com/join.